Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. Today we're going to be doing episode 2 of Inside the Mind of a Pro series, and if you guys don't know what it's about, I recommend you check out episode 1. We did it last week and it was a massive success. People loved it, and so I can say for certainty it will be a reoccurring series once a week on the channel. So thank you all for supporting me on this, and I hope you continue to enjoy it. Before I hop into this particular video, this particular game, I want to quickly announce that I have a really special announcement tomorrow. So yes, I am announcing an announcement, but I have a tournament, and it's going to be a really big tournament, at least for my standards, and I'm honestly lucky enough to be able to host it because it was sponsored entirely by a single fan, which is absolutely incredible. He financed the entire prize pool, and so I got right to work, and I've been working on it for a week now. I got all the players that are going to be involved up to date, and the announcement is tomorrow, so Saturday at 16 GMT. I'm going to release a video, 3 minutes. It's going to be the trailer with all the information, and the trailer's pretty hype. I got goosebumps while watching it myself. So that's exciting news. I hope I hope you guys will check that out tomorrow. And yeah, the tournament will be absolutely epic. I'm quite excited about it, and I will be covering the entire thing on my Twitch channel. Again, all the details will be in that trailer, so stay tuned for that tomorrow, 16 GMT. Alright, now let's get into this video, guys. Episode 2 of Inside the Mind of a Pro. I played this game off stream, and so, nobody actually watched it from my perspective, and so I figured it was actually a great game as well. It's a perfect one to review for this series. So without further ado, let's go ahead and hop right in and start playing it. So just a reminder here, I will be talking in a pretty consistent tone, just kind of commenting on what I'm thinking in the moment. And we're going to start by first analyzing the civs, because that is how I play the game. As soon as the game starts, I immediately think of what my strengths are, what my opponent's strengths are, and kind of consider how I want to play the game out from there. I'm currently playing as the Spanish, and my opponent is going to be the Franks. And so right away I'm thinking, oh my god, if I can get the conks, that would be a great unit, and something that can really control the game. It's great against cavalry, and it has really good mobility. But it's not always easy to get to unique unit on Arabia, and so it's not the only option. I did also tell myself if I have to play some sort of cavalry in castle, I would be pretty happy about that. Some light cav, knights, and monks, and then maybe hoping to survive until a late game where I can go for, Halb, supremacy vills, all that good stuff. Franks are a little bit more one-trick pony than the Spanish, especially as the game goes on, because they don't really have that broad tech tree in the late game, although they do have some really powerful options, most notably, of course, the knight line. I go ahead and scout my map like usual here, and I notice I've got a really back stone, which reinforces the idea that going for conks can be a really good move. But I do notice I've got that forward gold that's kind of on a hill, and I've got my other 2 golds that are kind of forward and unprotected, and going to be hard to control. And this is something I always look for. Those second resources, secondary golds, they often get overlooked and no one really considers them in their strategy, but it's quite important to at least take note of them in the Dark Age. Keep in mind, I do all this matchup thought while we're just developing the standard build, and a lot of you guys need to focus on the build order to make sure you guys don't mess up, and to some extent I do too. Like, the Dark Age is quite natural for me because I've done it so many times, but I still have to focus to make sure everything goes perfect and according to plan. But it's still the age of the game where the least amount of things are happening, and so I take advantage of that by thinking about the matchup and going through some of the game plans that I have and kind of figuring out 1 or 2 win conditions, how to put my civilization in a favorable position over my opponent, for example. Also, I'm a little sick, so if my voice sounds a bit off, that is why, but I'm still dedicated to making a video every single day until we hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, and so sickness for me was not an excuse. So yeah, we're here, still recording the video. And as you can see, I chose to actually lure deer here, and it's the kind of the neutralizing factor for me as the Spanish. Franks will naturally get the free farm upgrades. They're going to get the berry bonus that they always can gather faster, and in general, having more HP on the scouts means that they're going to have an advantage in the early game. And so the way I neutralize that advantage is by pushing 3 deer. This puts me at a disadvantage in terms of scouting, but since Franks are somewhat predictable in that they always like to play towards their scout line, I was okay giving up that scouting information for the extra food. Now, Franks usually play towards scouts, but there's not a guarantee. He could play men-at-arms, he could play some archers, and he could always transition into cavalry later. So I still don't take it for granted, but I am expecting scouts to be the main approach from him. So the way I like to go about it here, because I learned all 3 deer, I'm going to actually go ahead and try to play defensive in the early game. My thought process is, I already have a lot of food under my town center. I have a pretty good start in terms of the resources I've gathered in, but since I'm lacking information on my opponent's map, it's kind of dark out here, I'm, instead of trying to force the issue and attack him early, gonna stay on defense and kind of secure my map and play off the fact that I've got a really good economy and can make a lot of units on defense and just stay safe while I wall up. This is a good idea because the fact that I don't have any scouting information doesn't really hurt my defensive play. I got some comments in the last video. You guys wanted to know why I do 1 lumber camp sometimes and 2 lumber camps other times. It's very simple, guys. 1 lumber camp is always ideal if you have a really big wood line, and the lumber camp can be super efficient with holding 8 vills, for example. However, this wood line is pretty small, and so if I put 8 vills here, all of a sudden they'll be very inefficient, and they'll start bumping each other, and the trees will run out rather quickly. And so in this case, I pretty much have to go for a double woodline play, even though the second one is rather exposed. I start scouting my opponent here with my initial scout, and I'm kind of curious as to what he's going for. I scout his gold and his wood. Notice he's not on gold yet, and this is the big tell. Once I scout his barracks, I'm thinking, okay, it's pretty much a guarantee that he's going to be going for scouts. He wasn't on gold, and he has the barracks coming up now, and so it's pretty obvious that scouts is the only choice he has. I see him go up to feudal age at 19 pop time, and so this confirms a scout rush is coming. I immediately send my scout back because I recognize the fact that if he's up faster, he can chase my scout and kind of get some free hits off it, because my scout is still really slow in the Dark Age. So I send it back just to defend my vills and also to keep it away from his scout and not take any trades. I just got a sub while I was offline, so shout out to the guy who just prime sub. As you can see, my game plan to play defensive is working perfectly. I've already analyzed what strategy he's going for, and so at this point, I've ruled out any surprise factors. He's going scouts, and so I make a spear initially just to fend off his first scouts and also to keep it as a defensive tool. I'm also going for my own scouts, but keep in mind, I still don't know exactly how to hit him and where, because even though I've scouted a lot of his map now, I didn't really pay too much attention to that because I scouted it so late. And so, as of now, I'm still mainly focused on playing defensive. Also, the Franks have higher HP on their scouts, so if I try to play aggressive and I take some bad trades, I can risk falling behind. By playing defensive, I can ensure that I'm going to get my walls down sooner rather than later. And if there's ever a bad fight, I can always pull back and fight with my villagers so that I can equalize some of the trades. I wall the bottom side first, and then the top, because walling the extremities lets me focus all of my units in the center. And this is a really good defensive tool. It's very underrated. A lot of people start walling furthest. Let me restart that. A lot of people start walling in the most vulnerable position first, thinking they want to secure this part initially, and that's the place where the opponent's most likely to attack. That is the absolute wrong mentality. By walling the sides, I force my opponent to attack me in the most obvious location. This rules out 100% the chance of sneak attacks and lets me have my army ready to defend. My army is very similar in terms of caliber to his. I even have a spearman here, and so there's nothing that can go wrong. If he were to send a spearman forward himself, I would simply add in more spears myself and stay on defense. Here ACCM makes a bold move to run in my base. And believe it or not, this is actually a great move for me, and I would consider it a very significant misplay on his end. When it comes to Scout War, running inside the base is extremely risky, and I'd only recommend doing it if you heavily outnumber your opponent. In this case, he had 5 to my 4 scouts, but now it's even at 5-5. And I even have the spear as well to chase down the scouts and help me win the fight. So the reason why it's such a bad play from him is that I can continue chasing him, and whenever my scouts get low, I can run them back to my town center, and then just make another one, and continue fighting him until I kill all the scouts. if I play this perfectly, I should lose 0 units total. 0 units, not a single villager, not a single scout. If you were to try to target one of my villagers, I just simply run the villager back and then let my scouts get free hits. As you can see, I'm already employing the strategy. As soon as my low scouts start to get hit, I send them back and I protect them. I don't let them kill off any of my scouts. My thought process is that I want to kill all his units, keep all of mine alive, and then simply heal up all of my wounded units so I can have a fresh army in Castle Age. While all this is going down, I'm going to simply continue developing. There's nothing more to be done in Feudal Age. He went scouts, I went scouts, and so naturally, he can't break through my walls unless he adds a range unit. Adding archers early on is going to be very costly for him, and it's unnatural for Franks to transition to archers in the Feudal Age after going for some scouts. In this case, I actually don't let him surround my villager by just adding some walls, and I continue chasing him. And so at this point, I'm perfectly safe and looking to transition into the Castle Age. I go for a nice gate trap just to speed up the process because I want to kill him as fast as possible. And you'll notice that I completely gave up on the idea to go conks. This is an interesting point of the game, because this is something that even as I watch it back, I'm unsure of what the correct choice is. On one hand, I have a free pass to get the conks, and there's actually nothing stopping me from taking the stone with 4, 5, even 6 fills, and then dropping a castle as soon as I hit the Castle Age. That lets me go into Conquistador production, and it gives me a castle to defend my base. This is a great approach, and this is definitely a very viable strategy. The only reason I didn't go for it, though, is because he has the scouts in my base. And so if I were to go to stone, he would scout the fact that I'm on conks. If he scouts the fact that I'm on conks, he can prepare skirmishers or archers and defend himself pretty well, especially with the conks having 1 less pierce armor nowadays. And so because of the fact that he would have vision, I decided not to go on stone and keep my strategy hidden. This is extremely important because in high level, strategy is key, and I want to hide what I'm doing to prevent my opponent from actually countering me. And so the next approach that I have is to play cavalry. Remember at the start of the video, I talked about how there's either conquistadors or cavalry and monk play. And so conquistadors are not on the table, and so cavalry and monk play will be my go-to approach. At this point, I go ahead and scout him, and I notice something extremely strange. He's got 2 ranges, and I also see him queuing something in the barracks. So I know for sure he's going to plan a crossbow push in Castle Age. This is an interesting decision for him, because transitioning into range units so heavily as the Franks is not typically something you see. I'm almost certain ACCM did this because he was either expecting conks or he wanted to surprise me. But the fact that I've scouted it now has been such a huge importance to me. And if you notice, I actually went to scout his base, intentionally trying to find something like this, his transition or his follow-up. As soon as I found it, I simply ran back. There's nothing more for me to see. I already know exactly what he's doing, and I'm preparing my defense. Had I not scouted his archers, I wouldn't have made a siege workshop. I would have made a monastery. Since I saw his archers, I rushed down a siege workshop, and I only go for 1 TC to be able to afford a mangonel. I initially get light cav right away, as that's going to be my go-to unit, and then I go for a mangonel to help defend against crossbows. By placing a town center here, I force him to go left for this crossbows, and I just get some walls down to prevent him from running inside. He does a good play here and hits my low SP Palatine, and he actually kills a Vil, so that was a small mistake from myself. But I get him back with a pretty big shot with the mangonel, and this was a huge moment for me. Attack ground on the spearman to keep myself safe, and now as he's running away, I'm going to go ahead and trade my light cap into him. The reason why I don't engage here actually is the fact that I'm missing +2 armor, and a lot of my scouts are weak. Remember, my plan was to heal them up, and so I'm going to go ahead and do that. In hindsight though, I maybe should have taken that fight, because his crossbows were pretty weak as well, and so clearing them up could have been a good opportunity there. So I would say it's a small mistake, but you know, sometimes it's hard to play perfectly in the moment. At this point, I'm on 2 town centers and looking pretty solid. My next plan is probably to add a 3rd town center, as there's nothing more for me to be done. I have 2 TCs, monastery and siege, And so I could add another stable if I wanted to, put the pressure, or I could add a TC. That's kind of my two options. He picks off 2 villagers, and that was definitely the product of me ignoring that army. And so because I chose to be greedy and heal up my units, it actually ended up costing me 2 vills. This further emphasizes the fact that I probably should have killed those archers when I had the chance. Either way, I'm going to go ahead and heal up my light cav, and then look to start playing towards the relics. Relics are super key in matchups like this, where I'm basically guaranteed to win the late game if Franks run out of gold. If they have gold, Paladin can always be tricky to deal with, but without gold, Franks are really no big threat, and so taking the relics kind of ensures that my late game is going to be secured. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and clear up the crossbows, but meanwhile, I actually noticed he's going CA. This was a complete shock to me, and while you guys saw him producing up here, I actually had no idea he was going for this. And so as you can see, I was rather surprised when I saw him on the field with CA. Had he had crossbows, my 2 mangonels would have been enough to defend, but CA proved to be a lot more challenging to deal with. He gets a really good trade there, killing my 2 mangonels and 2 monks and a spear, so he got a really nice trade, only losing 3 cav archers. Meanwhile, I did kill up the crossbows. It was a pretty easy cleanup. And now with this new piece of information, the cav archers from him on the field, I've decided that I need to go for more units. So I start queuing up more mangonels, and I add the 3rd TC back home. And my plan is going to be to go for light cav and siege monk still. But this time I want to use the light cav in 2 different spots. The reason why I need units in 2 spots is to be able to pincer the cav archers. If I send all my units in one direction and have them all either defensive or in the middle of the map, it's going to be very awkward for me to engage on the cav archers. Example, this. I can't engage head on because he can just hit me and then run when I get too close. So I almost certainly have to get a flank on him and not force the fight by running straight at him. This is me using brute force to get some nice trades. I actually did this only because he has low HP cav archers, but usually I'd consider this a pretty bad play, and so you can see me pulling back because running at cav archers is usually not ideal unless you have overwhelming numbers advantage. At this point, I'm sitting in the middle of the map, and the reason why I'm not really curious as to what he's going for is because I kind of already know what he's doing. He showed his CA, and he showed the fact that he's on 2 ranges, and so at this point, the only thing he could be doing is more CA for the time being. I do want to scout what he's going for in a couple minutes. Just pick up a bill here. So in 2-3 minutes time, I want to see if he's either working his way towards Imperial Age, or if he's working his way towards All-In Castle. And so I'm going to need to scout him in 2-3 minutes. Right now, at 67 vills, there's no way he's really going Imp. It's not really a possibility. Of course, I was at 67 vills, not him, but I use my own vill count to judge my opponent's vill count. The way I do this is by recognizing that I only lost a couple of vills, and I added my town centers pretty quickly. So it's very unlikely for him to have a higher vill count than me if we did about the same thing. He invested around the same amount of military as me, he invested into cav archers, I did siege light cav, and I added my town centers pretty quick. So I thought, if I'm at 73 at this point, he's around the same. And so right now, as I'm getting closer and closer towards Imperial Age, now I feel like I need to actually scout him. And so in the next 2 minutes, I'm going to make an effort to try to go ahead and see what he's going to be going for. This is hard for me to do though, because he's continuing to harass me with cav archers, and I don't really have momentum on the field to attack. If I attack with all my army, I risk getting raided to death on my exposed woodlands. And I don't know much about his base, so I'm not really too excited about attacking him. He actually goes ahead and runs in with all of his cav archers here, and this is a pretty critical moment. But what's more important is that I actually scouted his night transition. Remember when I said I have to scout in 2 minutes time to see what he's going for? Now it's clear. I've actually scouted exactly what he's going for. I sent my light cav back to deal with the CA, which I'll show you in my base soon, and I focus on getting conversions with my knights, or with my monks. I now focus on defending the CA with my light cav, and I'm in full adaptation mode. I dropped 5 stables because I was going towards Imp, and I thought he would do the same. Now that he's all in castle, I go all in castle to defend myself a little bit. Had I had a counter unit on the field like pikemen, for example, You could make the argument to go Imp, because I can survive with Pikemen, and then all I have to do is go towards Imperial Age and play the game from there. Since I was far from Pikemen, and it would take a long time to drop 5 barracks and start making them, I decided instead to go for Knights, because I already had the upgrades on my Knights, and it would allow me to keep up with his mobility. So by keeping a good Knight mass and defending with Monks, I'm able to take good trades, while continuing to prolong my castlage. Because the idea of me going Imp is out the window, I add a 4th Town Center to continue adding in villagers, and to expand and develop my economy. I actually keep my light cav away from my main army. This is very similar to the theory on cav archers. I don't want to fight knights head on with light cav, and so the best tool for light cav here is to snipe monks or villagers coming forward to build a forward castle. Those are his 2 best plays. By recognizing this, I use my light cav to what they're best at, which is cutting off reinforcements and scouting the map. He's doing a good job raiding with cav archers, and he's actually forcing my army to constantly chase his, while he just runs away as soon as I get close. I don't really want to engage at this point, because my plan is simply to defend until I can have a castle. I noticed there's a really big hill in the center, and so the way I'm thinking about it is that if I can get a castle in the center, that would give a really good defender's advantage to my whole base. The castle would cut off the path from his base to mine, and it would force him to go around to raid me. I also felt like this is the perfect place to start trebbing him and take advantage of his main stone being pretty exposed. In my mind, taking this castle and then camping it and then going Imp seemed like a pretty good way to finish this game off. I thought I had a pretty good advantage. Although, spoilers alerts, the game actually takes a pretty weird couple turns, and it becomes a lot harder than that straightforward path that I imagined. One critical mistake I did here was that I kept my light cav kind of in the middle of nowhere. My light cav should have been constantly patrolling his base to see where his army's at. In comes another big mistake for me. I click Imp, and then I think there's no better choice but to take a fight in the middle of the map. This was an absolutely terrible decision. It doesn't matter how good the fight or bad the fight was for me. In fact, it was pretty bad. But even if it was a good fight, it would be a mistake. I'm on the way to Imp. All I have to do is wait 3 minutes, and then I could upgrade all of my units to Cavalier, and then I could easily win the fight. By taking the fight now, I basically said, okay, you've got more numbers advantage than me, and I'm going to fight for absolutely no reason in the middle of the map. So giving him the perfect opportunity to use his numbers advantage. This critical mistake leads into me being forced to take this fight, where he's flanking me with knights and fighting under my town center. This is not a bad fight for me, and I'm fighting under my town center, so getting some extra damage. And also, I'm converting with my monks, and so getting some free knights, being able to generally defend myself. Had I simply done this from the start without losing 10 knights in the front, I think I would have had a much easier path to success here. But because I took that initial bad fight, a lot of my knights were pretty weak, and I didn't have time to heal up all my knights, even though I really wanted to. I even picked up herbal medicine because I really wanted to heal my knights. But ACCM did a brilliant move. He never let me heal any of my knights and never gave me time to do that. At this point, I'm 15 seconds from Imp, and I actually don't like the fact that I'm 15 seconds from Imp. As soon as I hit Imp, my opponent will know that he has to engage on me, and I'm not in a good position where I can hold any engagement. So now I'm trying to distract him and prevent him from attacking my town center. Even though I just hit Imperial Age, I'm forced to take this fight. If I give up this town center and lose 10 villas, it could get messy. And so fighting here near my town center gives me a pretty good choke where I can take a decent trade. I also have defender's advantage, so this is a pretty decent spot, where my reinforcements are coming out faster than he can reinforce. At this point though, I need to wait for Blast Furnace, and so my main goal is simply to get him away from my base, and then wait till my upgrades kick in. That being said though, what happens in practice is not what the theory says. The theory was to just wait and kind of fight after Blast Furnace kicks in, giving me an extra 2 damage. But I ended up taking a fight that again I didn't have to take. And so once again, poor decisions from me are making this game a lot harder than it had to be. I now decided enough is enough and I need to switch into pikes. This might have seemed like a logical choice for you. Your opponent is on full knights and he's Franks. Why not switch to pikes from before? And the answer is simple, guys. If I switch to pikes when I can't fight his army head on with my knights, it's actually not a good idea, because he will be able to outmobile me, or outmobility me, outmaneuver me, I should say, and he will take fights where my pikes aren't. And so as I'm massing up my pikemen, he's going to be raiding me to death and killing a ton of villagers. After I get a ton of damage taken, and I get the halberdiers on the field, he can simply, with the eco advantage, switch to hand cannoneers or throwing axemen, and the whole halberdier transition didn't really work. It wasn't successful because I took too much damage. So I have to make the pike transition while having some knights to match his mobility. Because I took some bad fights, he still has a lot more units than I do on the field. So it's making my pike transition very awkward. That is why I'm kind of splitting him apart and sacrificing some knights to buy myself some time. I need to wait to have a decent amount of pikemen, because if I lose my pikemen mass, he can then just run in and raid me, and I have the same problem, where I can never get enough pikemen to hold myself and to keep up with his raids. Here I get a castle to defend this side of my base and to keep my gold secured. I also fight a little bit before halberdier, so again, not the best choice, but it wasn't a bad fight, so this is not the worst option to take. Once I get halberdier though, that's a really big swing in momentum, and I feel pretty good about the situation. I've also survived the Franks power spike throughout the entire game, and Spanish late game is considerably stronger, so I'm feeling pretty good about the game right now. And I actually sent in some raids with my knights and earlier my light cav, so that his economy is in pretty bad situation. He ends up calling the GG here, but honestly, it was a pretty good game, and if I made some mistakes here and there, more mistakes than I actually did, I think I could have lost this one. The big turning point, in my opinion, was the fact that I was able to get the castle in the center and then recognize that I have to play on defense. Despite taking some really bad trades, at least what I didn't do is send my army forward and take a fight outside his base. That would be the absolute worst thing I could have done. As you can see in this game, I played 90% on defense, and the reason for that was simply my civilization. Spanish is not a civ that can attack Franks unless I get to Conquistador, or maybe in some specific situation where I'll have the military advantage. In general, Franks get towards their power spikes, their free bloodline knights, their extra HP scouts, they get to those power spikes a lot quicker. Even the cav archers with extra HP from Franks was a really good switch from him, and kind of did well to counter my siege and light cav. Despite him playing well, he did make some mistakes, and you guys asked me in the last video to point out those mistakes before the game ends. So his biggest mistake, in my opinion, was that he waited till he had too many knights before attacking. He also attacked only in 2 spots. What he should have done is use his number advantage to raid me on the sides. Yes, I was walled in the early game, but as the game goes on, the walls get harder and harder to sustain. The tree lines get cut, you're forced to expand, and so your economy becomes a lot more vulnerable. So around the 30-minute mark, when he started to outnumber me with knights, he should have actually sent a lot of knights to raid me. Had he done that, I think I would have actually lost. Now, if played 100% correctly from both sides, I think Spanish should actually win this matchup. But the reality of it is, no one really plays perfectly, especially when you can consider surprise factors, the map generations, and misplays into the equation. I hope you guys enjoyed the second episode of Inside the Mind of a Pro. Please like the video, as you can see up here, and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and be sure to comment below if you want to see a next episode in the series. It's important that you guys do that, because I judge my videos based on viewership, comments, likes, and general feedback. And so if those are not looking good, I stop making that kind of video, because at the end of the day, I want to push my channel forward. So if you like this and want to see more, definitely be sure to do those things. I also, this is the only series on the channel like this, where I talk in a pretty consistent tone, and I review my own games. So yeah, once a week, there's nothing else like this right now. So for those who want to watch it, definitely make yourself heard. It's the best way for me to know to continue doing it. Either way, thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.